Welcome inside the Glory Road podcast. Billy Beebe with you as always, back for his second appearance on the Glory Road podcast. Logan Haid joining me today. Logan, how are you? A little quarantine action, but with the NBA kind of swinging back around, I think the excitement's back.
Yeah, Billy, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about it because, as you know, there's not much live sports to talk about.
All right, so most of today, Logan and I will be taking a look at Kevin Love, the Cavs star, I guess. Still a star. That's something we'll dive into, but their star big man, definitely outspoken at this point, which we definitely salute his going out and talking about mental health and whatnot. But, Logan, we're looking to break down three categories. Kind of that pre-championship Kevin Love, just kind of what we thought of him. The championship run in those 4 years, and then now where we kind of sit with K-Love as he is in, man, I think he's in year 2 of a 5-year deal. So there's still a whole lot of Kevin Love left for Cleveland fans, and we'll jump into that. But, Logan, let's start with kind of where the Cavs were to acquire him. The big man came from the Minnesota Timberwolves. He was the 5th overall pick originally drafted by the Grizzlies. Goes to the Timberwolves, 11 in his first year, 11 points per game. 14 is next, and then he takes that jump in year 3, 20 points, 26 points, 18, and then 26 points. So, I mean, this is a guy that built on years of his career, got a little better, got all-star appearances, and really was considered a top all-star in the league, but never made the playoffs. So when the Cavs acquired him, what was your thoughts on Kevin Love? How did you see him? How did you view him?
With LeBron, we knew our timeline was short. So a lot of those guys in the draft, like we could have had Joel, and obviously now that would have been amazing. But back in that time, like it wouldn't have helped us at all because Joel really didn't do anything for 2 years. So it makes sense that we traded our pick, that we traded the guy we got, which happened to be Andrew Wiggins. But Kevin Love, like I was kind of questioning the fit before, like when the trade talks were happening, and I wasn't too thrilled about it when it happened. And most of those ideas have kind of came to fruition as we've seen over the past few years.
Yeah, I think the biggest deal, Logan, is they had to do a win now move, right? You get LeBron. I think it was never rumored Kyrie was going to move. I don't think that was ever an option. And you felt like they had to go get somebody. And if I remember correctly, there was no other star on the market. Love had gone 5 years in Minnesota, never made the playoffs. They'd switched multiple coaches. Rubio wasn't getting any better as a scorer. And they were kind of they're in the part of the NBA that I hate for teams is that middle where they're not going to get a top pick and they're not going to make the playoffs. And if I remember correctly, he was the only option, right? I don't think there was anyone else they could try and bring in.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I mean, it's easy for us to say Kevin Love doesn't really fit good. We shouldn't have traded Andrew Wiggins for him. We shouldn't have traded our pick for him. But at the end of the day, if there's no one else available, this was our best move.
Yeah, so let's jump into that. I'm citing 2 articles I wrote here. One for UMU Dynamo. Actually, both will be from umudynamo.com. The first one, I took a look at the Kevin Love trade 3 years down the line. So this would have been from 2 summers ago, I believe. Let's start here. I say no matter what, Logan, that it's not a loss. You got a championship. So I don't think fans kind of look back on this trade and kind of, what if? And in this article, I was really high on Wiggins and really how he, number one, played against Golden State. He has an oddly efficient career against the Warriors, and now he's on the Warriors. But he had played really well, some big wins, and played his team into wins against the Warriors. And I really felt like, maybe we shouldn't have traded him at times, but I think now where I sit with it, I still think Love was the right move.
Yeah, I mean, to get a championship, it's hard to say it's not the right move. Like, yes, there's going to be some after effects, like after the championship where we're going to go downhill a bit because we lose our big pieces. Some of the people we paid too much money just to get them to stay for those championship runs. It makes sense why we did it. It's just it's hard after. You're like, oh, why did we do this? It's hard to remember those good days.
Let's kind of shift towards as he arrives in Cleveland. There was some pushback with LeBron. I don't know how much you remember of that, but there was some subtweets and there was back and forth. And did you feel like his game didn't fit the Cavs, or did you feel like he wasn't accepting the roles as a third fiddle really well.
I always thought he accepted the role really well because the way he was coming from Minnesota, where he was the guy, I'm sure his usage percentage was really high. His points and rebounds were great. And coming to Cleveland, everything goes down. And I mean, did you ever hear him complain about anything? I never did.
Yeah, I don't think he was too open about it. I think he had some complaints about the offense or something like that with David Blatt, and there was some kind of back and forth with him and LeBron in year 1 and 2. But I think that kind of it just gets resolved when you're competing for championships. And then of course he ends up tearing his shoulder in the first round of year 1 in the 2014-2015 season. He did pretty well in that year. I thought he fit kind of how you wanted him to. 16 points a game, about 10 rebounds. So kind of happy with that. Logan, here's my first question. This is kind of an interesting one and kind of for us to grade. Obviously, he's taken some steps back since he's arrived in Cleveland and never really come back to that 26 points a game form. Do you think after he tore his shoulder, did it look like to you that it affected him?
I think a big thing was the weight loss. I mean, in Minnesota, he was a big guy and he was down in the post, banging around all game, every game. And now he's dropped some weight. He's getting older. It's like, I don't know if he can do what he used to do. So that's why he's kind of relegated to shooting jump shots. And he gets around the rim, but it's like more crafty rather than like, I don't know, like asserting his dominance down there.
So you don't think after he tore his shoulder, that's kind of what got worse for him?
I don't know. I never noticed an exact change after he tore his shoulder. I wouldn't say that, but who knows?
I still thought he came back, played well. He hit some big shots, obviously. I think a big problem with Kevin Love in his years here is people never considered how bad a defensive player he was. He just moves awkwardly. He gets trapped between small forwards and power forwards. And I think either way, he's going to lose sometimes. He's a good rebounder. And obviously, it's extremely impressive how he's developed a three and kind of pushed more in his post game. But I mean, it's clear more and more that he's really struggled on defense.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if it has to do with his size or his athleticism and older age, but also it seems like when we're winning, he's like all in. And like a lot of games when I would watch, it'd be like the first quarter, Kevin Love has like 20. And he's
Right.
just like pouring in, he's scoring every time. And then the third quarter comes around, he's kind of missing. The Cavs are down 25, and it's like he doesn't even care at that point, which I kind of get, but it just he'll never be able to like be that guy for a team with that attitude.
Yeah, and we'll jump to where the Cavs are at with him now, Logan. I want to take a look at the championship run, kind of where we're at now, the championship year. I noted he was really bad. I don't think people realize how bad he was in that series, and I noted it
Hmm.
in my article. I really there's some shocking numbers in there, Logan. I believe he exits in Game 3 of the 2016 Finals. Um, he averaged 8.5 points that year, and I believe his high was 11 in that series. And I just that's not okay. I think
Yeah,
something really wrong. And again, this is the championship year. This is when everything clicked, and they had a great playoff run. And that big series. He didn't play Game 3, which was a win. They dominated in Game 3, and he wasn't even there. And then he never showed up in the other games. I thought that was seriously concerning.
yeah. LeBron's carrying so much of the load. It's like the guys around him. You need to be able to kind of pick up LeBron's defensive slack. I don't know if I'd call it slack, but he only has so much to give. And Kevin Love, like, yes, he can score off of LeBron, but he can't really defend for LeBron.
So more, you want him on offense. He had to show up on offense in that
Yeah,
series.
that part too was bad.
The injury thing, I don't blame the shoulder thing. I don't think that's a big. That's kind of freak. The concussion is killer, man. That's random, and it that's an injury prone thing. And then of course he breaks his foot the year LeBron leaves, the year we really thought we could compete a little bit.
Yeah.
You think of him as injury prone?
I don't know. I wouldn't. I guess I've never thought of Kevin Love as injury prone before, but when you like go back through all these things, but how many of those are freak things? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not like it's one part of his body that he's constantly re-injuring, like his back or like a certain part of his ankle or something. It's different things. Like it could almost happen to anyone.
Uh, Logan, let's jump back a little bit. So I cited his numbers in that championship run. I did note it might have paid off to have Wiggins in that series. Do you feel like that, or do you feel like the idea of having a veteran scorer and obviously a star was better, or do you think Wiggins, who averaged 16 points a game that year, might have shown up, might have been healthy, might have been more athletic? If you could have gone back, and we did win the series, no doubt, would you think you would have just kept Wiggins and maybe you had him in 2015 and maybe you had a better performance from him in 2016?
Yeah, I think Wiggins back then was not really an efficient scorer. He didn't really show a lot of effort on the defensive end. And I don't know, maybe if he wasn't on the Timberwolves that were used to losing and he was playing with LeBron and the Cavs competing for championships, maybe he would have found that like defensive aggression. I don't know about his scoring, but if he had more effort, he's that kind of long, athletic guy that could cover some defensive flaws or some miscues he made.
All right, let's jump to the next year. I think the next year is about the same, right? So Love, he boosts up a little bit, averages 19, does a little better, fits in better. Obviously, the Cavs get to the championship, and they get swept out or not swept out. They win one game versus the Warriors. So now we jump to trade value, okay? And I think the summer, even the summer they won the championship, I think they still were looking to move him just because of how good the Warriors got. Um, Looking at that, Logan, I cited again, man. He had no trade value. They couldn't
Yeah.
get the deal done. I think again, it's hard not to think that Wiggins might have been more valuable to a team.
Oh, at that point, I think Wiggins is definitely more valuable. But I guess we probably knew going up that Kevin Love, we were getting him for those next 2 3 years. We knew that we would lose out in the long haul because no matter who you picked in the draft, they were probably going to be better than Kevin Love in 4 years. And Kevin Love would have degraded. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of use the Paul George trade as an example because there was a deal done. They were ready to go. Um, the Pacers were ready to get the deal done with the Cavs. I think it was just basically maybe Shumpert was in there, but it was a straight up love for Paul George, maybe our first rounder deal, and I think it was done and in stone. And I don't know, can't remember who backed out. Somebody backed out, and we can jump into Love and his trade talks, but I just think at that point, man, I think Wiggins sways the deal. No matter what he is now, I think Indiana's more comfortable taking Wiggins at that point.
Oh, yeah. And it's not that Kevin Love sucks. It's not that he's a bad basketball player. The problem is his contract paired with his age because that's a big contract for multiple more years.
Yeah, I think especially now, I think that's tough. But I mean, just in speaking of terms of where he was, why do you think he wasn't valued where Wiggins could have been? I always find that really interesting. That didn't have enough star value. Wiggins had all that potential, but Love, I guess, lost some star value being the number 3 guy.
Yeah, I think that kind of happened. And I don't know, maybe you think the same thing happened with Chris Bosh when he was on the Heat. He kind of went to that third man role. And then by the end of it, it's like, I don't know I don't remember exactly why he ended up staying in Miami, but I don't think he had a ton of suitors trying to sign him.
Yeah, I remember there might have been one, and man, Love has certainly been controversy in trade talks since he's got here.
Yeah.
At one point, they wanted Carmelo for him, which looking back, maybe I would have been okay with. I don't know. It's really tough to look at him, and again, you got your championship, so you can't be too unhappy with it. But
Yeah.
I just think there were times that maybe Carmelo would have been a nicer fit, just a more automatic scorer, a nicer number 1. And then, of course, to think we almost got that deal done to get Paul George into Cleveland.
For a
Um,
year, right? That was when he had a year left on his contract.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, okay.
definitely the Pacers, they made the right move. If you're looking at the Pacers, they end up getting Oladipo instead.
Oh yeah.
Let's look at now, Logan. The Cavs are in a weird spot. I want to cite the kind of conversation we had recently. I thought it was interesting. I said why don't they just run an offense through Love? Why not? That's what they should be doing, you'd think. He is the most experienced. He's at times their highest scorer, their most consistent player. Why don't they just run the offense through him?
Yeah, I know a ton of people are probably asking that. You have this guy making the most money on the team, making a ton of money over a lot of years. You're like, oh, this guy should definitely be our guy. And he's really not. I mean, again, I talked about this earlier. It seems like he'd fall off as the game went on, maybe because we were losing. I don't know.
Do
But
you,
that's a good question. I don't know.
do you think he can't be a number one anymore? Do you just think he doesn't have that in him to go out there and think, I'm the best player on this team?
It seems like from what he's shown over the last couple of years that he doesn't have it.
Yeah, maybe that's mental. I think at times he does, he obviously, I don't know, just thinking, and he had the year where he just, last year, where, he played, I think, 2 games, hurt himself, and came back and played the final 10 or something like that. But
Mm,
I think this past year specifically, there's not a game that you can think about where K-Love dominated and the Cavs won,
yeah, yeah.
You can
It's
think of
hard for him to put together a complete game.
you can think of a Sexton game, right? That was really good, and he played
Yeah.
good, and the Cavs win. But there's no Kevin Love double overtime winner, and I think that is kind of a bad call. Now let's look at the contract, right? So he signed it as LeBron left. He signed it 5 years, $35 million a year, which I believe the cap went up that year. So I don't think that was. It's such a difficult thing because probably and most definitely he's not worth his contract, okay? But I just think mentally as a team and as a franchise, you want a top 30, top yeah, top I'd say he was top 30 at the time. You want a top 30 player in general, your team does.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So I just think that's what the Cavs thought is we have a top 30 player. We're not going to let him walk away. If he has
Yeah.
interest in coming back, there's no reason to let him go. And I think a lot of people thought, oh, man, why did we sign Love for that much? I pin it on that. That's where I stake the claim is it's really hard. And I think if you want to look at the Cavs drafts, those are the best examples. It's really hard to find a top 30 player
Yeah,
and
that's
just
true.
develop him and keep him there, right? Love has probably stayed in the top 30,
Hmm.
40. But what were your thoughts with that signing? And obviously there's some regret now, but what do
I
you
guess kind of on the flip side of it, if you know you're gonna have a few down years, Kevin Love is like a great guy to be on your like. He's a good PR guy. He has a lot of these things he's doing off the court that are phenomenal. So he's a good guy for the city. And if the Cavs know they're gonna be bad, they're like, you're gonna have to pay someone, and you can pay your money on a bunch of guys like the Knicks did, a bunch of mid-level guys, and not that they're competing, but you could compete for an eight seed in the playoffs. But I don't know. Maybe this is just a different way to spend your money while losing.
I think that's a good call. I said that, and I said that when LeBron was leaving, I felt very comfortable with the Cavaliers situation because Larry Nance is a fan favorite and Kevin Love is still there, and you had a number 1 pick. And they stink and they're not of interest, but I think Love is still of real interest. Logan, as we kind of wrap up this Kevin Love review show, as we dove into different parts of his careers, players that are kind of interconnected with him, things like that. Logan, here's a tough one. Is Kevin Love the best player on the Cavaliers?
Man, a best player like today, if you were to have everyone in the gym, I would say yes. I would say yes.
Still gonna go with him. Best
I,
guy.
what do you think? Who would you pick?
Yeah, I think that's tough. I think I,
Even if you were to say who are the top three right now?
I'd still say, if I had to think, it's still I would probably pick Sexton, Drummond, and Love. I still think
Oh
they're
yeah,
players. I think Drummond's really good, and I
I
think
agree. Yeah, I forgot about him honestly.
I haven't given up on Sexton yet. I still think he has big time opportunities, and Love sitting at 17 and a half points a game and about 8 rebounds is kind of what you'd like from him. I just think overall, Logan, I think they just hoped for more wins. I think they hoped with a stable champion and star. I think that's where Kevin Love has failed the Cavaliers.
Yeah. Yeah, he hasn't really produced, really.
I think that's the biggest killer. So we talked a little bit about the trades, right? I wrote back where we sit right now. I think it was right before the deadline. I listed some of the options, and basically what I came to was none of the options were going to work, right? Portland, just their money wasn't going to work. We weren't going to take Whiteside. And this was even before we got Drummond. So Portland wasn't going to work. Denver wasn't. I just thought they had talked about it, but Denver it never made sense. He's basically Paul Millsap, and Paul Millsap's expiring. And then there were rumors of Miami, and I believe I think I listed the Knicks too, maybe, but there were a couple teams in there that I thought had interest in him. I would like to know your thoughts on Kevin Love moving in the next couple of years.
I don't know. I think he's gonna stay put. Unless the Cavs are pushing and like Sexton continues his progression, maybe like Kevin Porter Jr. or Garland maybe break out a little bit, and they're like, oh, maybe if we can trade Kevin Love for somebody, for maybe we're losing on value, and then we have more money for free agency to sign someone who might produce a little less than Kevin Love, maybe 2 of those guys, and maybe we have a shot at the playoffs with young guys. That might be what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. If I had to put money on it, I just don't think he's gonna. There's no move to make. I think he's not. He's never gonna push his way out.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like he craves to be a part of a championship roster. I don't think he's gonna push his way out. I think his trade value is still down. It goes down every year. I think I think this was probably your last year to try and get a contender to jump at him. Portland, I thought, was specific.
Yeah.
They got to midseason with a solid record and wanted to go over the top. Instead of Carmelo, they'd go with Kevin Love. So kind of sticking with that. Those are my thoughts. I don't think he's leaving. You said you don't think he's leaving. Yeah, definitely interesting. K-Love, he's crazy to think he's had as many years in Cleveland as he did in Minnesota now. I think he's almost more of a Cav than he is a Timberwolf at this point. An interesting career, I think. It's going to be one heck of a book when he writes it coming out. Logan, thanks for jumping on with us and talking a little bit about K-Love. It looks like the Cavs are not going to Disney, I guess. I don't think they're inviting the worst teams, but next season, any high hopes for the Cavaliers, or is it just probably similar to what we just saw?
It's going to be similar, but we'll still be watching.
I know. We'll leave that conversation for another day. Thanks for tuning into the Glory Road podcast, and thanks again to Logan Haid for jumping on.